At the end of the 15th century, the famous navigator Christopher Columbus discovered the continent in the Caribbean, which later became known as America, and immediately all European powers were interested in the new lands. And the first settlers went to the unknown shores of the continent to establish colonial settlements. A little more than a century later, a new state arose on the developed territories of North America, which is now the hegemon of international politics and a superpower: the United States of America. The founding date of this country is considered to be July 4, 1776, when the Union of 13 states signed the Declaration of Independence from Britain. But what has the history of the United States gone through up to this point, and how the United States actually appeared? Today we will understand this issue, too. So, at the end of the 15th century, the discovery of a new continent caused unprecedented excitement. After all, everyone wants to quickly develop American lands, but the first to appear in America were the Spaniards until the middle of the 16th century. They are the ones who lead the development of new territories on the Pacific coast, having thoroughly studied California and significant sections of the coastline. But on the Atlantic coast of North America, the main discovery was made by the British, Portuguese, and French. In 1497, Giovanni Cabot, an Italian who had moved to England, set sail on an expedition organized by King Henry VII, during which the island of Newfoundland was discovered and new territories of the Florida coast were explored. In 1540–41, Francisco Vasquez de Coronada's expedition in the Missouri River Basin led to the discovery of the Grand Canyon of the Colorado. And why do you think the Spaniards were so successful in leading the development of the American territory? The fact was that the Spaniards were famous as excellent navigators, because in the era of great geographical discoveries, it was Spain, along with Portugal, that actively equipped sea expeditions to distant shores. Well, the Invincible Armada, assembled for the invasion of England, was a large military fleet consisting of 130 ships, suffered a crushing defeat from the British, after which the influence of the Spanish power in the New World began to decline, and the main competitors in the assimilation of North America from this point on, Britain and France, became long-standing rivals. In 1608, a French settlement was founded in Quebec. And in 1682, Louisiana in the Mississippi River Basin. But at the beginning of the 17th century, the British colonization of North America accelerated significantly. From that moment on, the British actually became the main owners of the new territories. The period of English colonization of America officially began. The so-called colonial period of U.S. history lasted for 170 years from the creation of the first British settlements until the beginning of the struggle for independence. How it all began for England on the territory of America. In 1584, the English navigator Walter Raleigh discovered the shores of modern Carolina, which then became the property of England. Queen Elizabeth gave the new lands the name Virginia, and it was there in 1607 that the first English settlement called Jamestown arose. In just a couple of years, it turned from a transit base into a thriving village. And after just 13 years, its population was 1,000 people. After all, European immigrants were attracted to America by rich natural resources. The desire many migrants moved to the New World with their entire families to become rich and change their occupation. Despite the attractiveness of the new lands, however, the colonies still suffered from a shortage of human resources. Another important detail is that, under King James I in 1606, two trading companies, the London Company and the Klimowskaia Company, were formed in England. Their main goal was the colonization of North America. The charters of these companies recognized that the colonists and their descendants remained English in all respects and enjoyed all the rights and privileges in America as if they had remained in their homeland. This subsequently gave the colonists the formal right to resist England's claims to tax them. Looking ahead, it is worth remembering that this very circumstance, years later, played a significant role in the struggle for independence. However, for now, British colonizers were settling in new territories. Active construction began in the 1720s, with foundations laid in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, Rhode Island, and New Jersey. The British displaced yet another Dutch colonizer from the Hudson River Basin. The city they built, New Amsterdam, and the Portuguese colony of New Holland were renamed New York, Dutch attempts to recapture the captured territory ended in failure, and by the 18th century, all European powers except England were weakening their influence in North America. However, it was becoming difficult for Britain itself to keep its colonies in subjection. After all, at that time they already had their own established system of government. By the end of the 17th century, 13 English colonies were formed on the Atlantic coast of the future United States between Florida and the St. Lawrence River. We will list them: New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and of course, the very first Virginia. The total population on the territory of North America was already approximately 250,000 people. Of course, with such population growth, rapid economic and political development was inevitable. In response to this, in the mid-17th century, Great Britain tried to establish complete control over the economic development of the American colonies. By law, all industrial goods were imported by the colonies through the metropolis in exchange for raw materials and agricultural products, and of course, English entrepreneurs were not interested in the development of industry in the colonies, as well as in trade in the colonies with anyone other than. Do you see a direct contradiction here? At the same time, American industry, especially in the northern colonies, was developing rapidly. The colonists were particularly successful in shipbuilding. This allowed them to quickly establish trade with the West Indies and find a market for domestic manufacture. However, the English Parliament perceived these successes as a threat and took a number of measures aimed at suppressing the colony's foreign trade. In 1763, the Shipping Act was passed, according to which goods were allowed to be transported and exported from the American colonies only on British ships. Moreover, everything had to be loaded in Great Britain. Consider also the many duties and taxes on goods that the colonists were obliged to pay. It is not surprising that even then, direct preconditions for the War of Independence were emerging. By the second half of the 18th century, it became increasingly clear to the British and Americans that a conflict between the colonies and the metropolis could not be avoided. By the way, propaganda in the media played a significant role in this. The first American newspaper appeared in 1704, and by 1765 there were already 25. Of course, ideas and thoughts were expressed there that were not welcomed by the British. Fuel was added to the fire by the Stamp Act adopted by the English authorities in 1765. According to this document, all trade transactions, as well as the sale of books, newspapers, and the registration of civil documents were subject to a fee in favor of the English crown. This law caused new mass protests and unrest in the North American colonies. And of course, there were attempts to mitigate the situation. Benjamin Franklin put forward a project to create a union of the colonies with its own government, headed by a president who would be appointed by the British Crown. It did not provide for complete independence, but in London it still caused an extremely negative reaction, and only after that it became obvious that an armed conflict was only a matter of time. In December 1773, radically minded colonists blocked the unloading of tea that arrived on 3 English ships 7 days later. Under cover of night, a group of revolutionaries committed sabotage by dumping 350 boxes of tea worth £15,000 into the ocean. To us, such a sum may seem insignificant, but in fact, the price is equivalent to $2 million. Such a protest could not go unnoticed, but the punitive operation, the British government's actions against Boston, not only failed to pacify the rebels but also served as a call for all American colonies to unite in the fight for independence. The Boston Tea Party became the spark that ignited the American Revolution a year later. On September 5, 1774, representatives from all the colonies except Georgia arrived in Philadelphia. This is how the First Colonial Congress began its work and lasted until October 26. During this time, demands were formulated to Britain regarding the rights of the American colonies to life, freedom, and property. The document developed at the same Congress, the Continental Association, authorized the resumption of the boycott of English goods in the event of the British Crown's refusal to make concessions in its financial and economic policy. Of course, retaliatory measures were not long in coming. Britain put forward demands for the complete submission of the colony to the authority of the Crown and declared that it would suppress open rebellion. This once again demonstrated to the colonists that their strength lay only in unity and that they should not count on a lenient attitude. They were preparing for active hostilities. On May 10, 1775, the Second Continental Congress was held, which declared itself the central government of the colonies uniting for joint defense against British aggression. At the same meeting, General Washington, a charismatic political leader, was appointed commander of the United Continental Army a year later. On July 4, 1776, Congress voted to proclaim the independence of the United States and adopted the Declaration of Independence, which became the basis for the constitution of the new federal state. Thus, the long period of colonial rule of the British Empire over North America ended, and the United States of America was born. So, we found out that before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the United States went through several periods of its development, including colonization, the creation of 13 colonies, the first colonial Congress, and finally the creation of an institution of power to become a superpower in the form in which we know it now. The United States still has a long period of the Revolutionary War, the acquisition of new lands, the Gold Rush, and the bloodiest Civil War for the United States. But that's a completely different story. And what do you think influenced the formation of the United States as states? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for your attention. See you soon.